the next speaker of the day, Dr. Sunita N., who is a professor in ophthalmology from St. John's Medical College, Bangalore. She is again going to share her experience, her data in the south part of India. Over to you, Dr. Sunita. You may share your slides.
Thank you, AIOS, and especially thank you, Fairoz, for this opportunity. Okay, so since the previous speakers addressed presentations, I'm not going to spend time on that. What we looked at is at the risk factors for the comparing the COVID patients who had mucormycosis and patients who had COVID in the second wave itself and did not develop mucor. So I'll keep my presentation as brief as possible for want of time. So I said that I will be talking on clinical presentation and risk factors. In the clinical presentation, I just want to highlight just one. All the previous speakers have highlighted all the various ways that mucor patients presented and how they are staged as sinonasal, rhinovital, rhinovitocerebral. We also had patients, and the first speaker also said that it need not go in that progression. That's correct. We had two patients who had only rhinocerebral and had no ophthalmic involvement at all. I just wanted to highlight this particular patient, a 29-year-old male who presented with history of loss of vision in the left eye of 24 hours duration, which was associated with mild left-sided headache and retrovital pain. He was diagnosed to have moderate COVID-19 infection about 15 days prior, and he received oral steroids for 10 days. He did not receive any oxygen, and other routine medications which were used for COVID-19 treatment was given to him. He is not a known diabetic and was detected to have very high sugars at the time of presentation to us. And ocular examination revealed that there was no perception of light in the left eye. There was an afferent pupillary defect, and fundus findings showed ophthalmic artery occlusion. His extraocular muscle movements were normal. There was no ptosis and there was no proptosis. Now, in a 28-year-old male who is not a known diabetic who presents with CRAO, there can be multiple causes, and this was in very early phase of the second wave in Bangalore. So the retina person who saw the patient had many other differential diagnoses in mind. But when we both saw the patients together, I said, why don't we get a CT-PNS first, at least minimum? We'll have to keep mucormycosis in mind because there were increased mucormycosis even in the first wave. And CT showed pansinusitis. We also did a MRI brain and orbit to see the extent of vital involvement. He underwent sinus debridement, and he's now which showed, and the histopathology and the fungal culture showed rise mucorales and aseptate fungal invasion, angioinvasion, and tissue invasion on histopathology. The patient presently has completed his treatment with 4 grams of liposomal amphotericin B, and we are now considering discharging him with posaconazole cover for 15 days. The other patients are routine patients who presented with total ophthalmoplegia, total ptosis, facial pain. They've undergone either debridement or exenteration. And this one patient did not have history of COVID. When he presented to us like this, we got the COVID test done and he was positive, and he remained in the COVID ward for a long time. And that was a difficulty of managing these patients, because for close follow-up becomes very difficult, because each time you will have to get fully ready to go and see these patients. So by the end of the wave, we actually created a COVID cum mucor ward to take care of these patients. And this patient had presented like typical rhinovitocerebral with altered sensorium and severe proptosis. This patient did not do well and he expired. So the summary of signs and symptoms, what I want to highlight here, all the other previous speakers have highlighted all this. What I want to highlight here is, normally the rule that we follow at St. John's, we've been treating mucormycosis for a long time. And pallid chemosis was the key factor when patients come to you with total ophthalmoplegia. we always think of mucormycosis. This time, quite a few patients presented with severe pain in the orbit and with the signs of inflammation, almost mimicking acute orbital cellulitis. So that was one change, and we noticed that a lot of patients presented with raised on evaluation. The intraocular pressures were also very high, which we had not noticed in the previous non-COVID mucor patients. That was the only difference. Otherwise, more or less, the presentation followed the same pattern of mucormycosis even in non-COVID patients, which we are used to seeing all these years. So we had, I have complete data only for 60 patients. In the second wave, we've had 75 patients with mucormycosis. So I will only present our data for these 60 patients where the data is complete. 21 had sinonasal disease. Rhinovital disease was seen in 31, rhinovitrocerebral in 6, and rhinocerebral in 2. So what are the risk factors for rhinovital or for ROC and mucormycosis? So we all, even the previous speaker said, and we know even when we check on literature, it is a rare disease. It used to be a rare disease till we were hit by this sudden surge in mucormycosis case along with the COVID surge. It is a ubiquitous fungus. So even if all of us had a nasal swab taken, many of us would be harboring these spores. So who does it affect? The interplay of the host pathogen interplay is what decides whether a person develops mucormycosis or not. What is required for infection to occur? First, you need the organisms to be present. The organism should germinate by evade the person's immune system and then multiply, cause angioinvasion, tissue invasion, and then it progresses. So that is what is required for mucormycosis to manifest in an individual. So it doesn't happen in a person who's immunocompetent. Phagocytosis takes care of the spores. If by chance these spores bypass the phagocytic function, then the polymorphonuclear neutrophils take over and they destroy the multiplying the fungal elements. And macrophages play this role. Now, all these gets affected in patients with hyperglycemia, especially when they have diabetic ketoacidosis. As low pH reduces phagocytic effects, acidosis releases iron which is bound to proteins. And this free iron is what helps in the free growth of, luxuriant growth of the organism. And hyperglycemia is another factor which helps in the growth of the organism. So presence of iron overload, neutropenia are all the important changes that are required for the organism to become invasive. So what we know so far is diabetics with and without ketoacidosis, hematological malignancies, immunosuppressive therapy, presence of iron load, as you would see in dexferoxine therapy, which is not in use anymore, steroid use, prolonged steroid use, so solid organ and bone marrow transplants. This is what we've always known. These are the immunocompromised individuals. When it did occur in immunocompetent patients, even in them, there had to be some sort of predisposing factor, maybe burns, trauma where the spores got implanted into the skin. That usually manifested as a dermatological manifestation. I've had experience with at least 2 patients who are immunocompetent and developed mucormycosis. Both had facial burns and scar tissues. So this is a publication many years ago in 2003, where we published 33 cases of rhinovital mucormycosis. And in this group of patients, the commonest cause was the immunocompetent state was diabetes with and without ketoacidosis in almost 82% of patients, with two having CKD and chronic liver disease, and 1 patient on long-term steroid use for ITP. So why this epidemic of mucor in COVID patients? So we included 64 age and gender matched controls who were COVID-19 patients who were treated at our institution who did not have mucor. Can I just take you through this next 2 slides? Feiruz?
Have 50 seconds with you.
Sorry. Okay. So,
1 minute.
yeah, they were matched gender and age. To remember that COVID patients without mucor was slightly older, but our age matched the data which came out from in the IGO, the latest IGO publication. And there was a major male predilection. There was no hypertension, and CKD was not found to be different in the two groups, in the mucor and controls. What we found was the highest RBC was severely elevated in patients with mucormycosis. And another important difference between the two groups was mucor occurred even in patients with mild and moderate COVID, while our controls were mainly, because we included inpatients, had moderate to severe COVID. And despite that, the severe COVIDs did not really develop mucormycosis. We may have to wait for some more data. But what was important was the highest RBC was really very high in COVID patients with mucor compared to COVID controls. And HbA1c was also extremely elevated at any given time.
Yeah,
I
ma'am.
think this data got mixed up. I think it's the other way around. The COVID with mucor patients on an average had more than 10 HbA1c. Ferritin also was marginally elevated in the mucor group, and the C-reactive protein was also extremely elevated. So,
Ma'am,
so why
you
do
can wrap
patients
it up quick? Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. So we need to look at compare our data with the non-patients who did not develop mucor. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for sharing your experience again from one part of South India.